A very warm welcome to the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And today's show is Standing on the Shoulders of Giants. What a title that is, which captures the incredible life journey of a gentleman whose spirit is one of resilience and determination. Despite being critically ill, bullied and homeless on the streets of London, he persevered to graduate from one of the top engineering universities in the UK. Today he is a renowned TEDx speaker, multi-award winning author of several books, filmmaker, executive producer, and one of the world's foremost experts on human behavior, psychology, health, excellence, empowered and purposeful living, leading and loving. Is there no end to his incredible life story and talents? Well, let's get into the story and we'll see. Yes, folks, it gives me immense pleasure to welcome onto the show Tony J. Selimi. Welcome to the show, Tony.
Thank you so much, Lord Russell, for this opportunity to share insights so others can grow.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, running your script, Tony, it's empowering. It really is. You've had a life of pure empowerment and a true roller coaster ride, of course, that I've been on and others too. So it's fantastic. But let's get right into the beginning. It was a tough start in your early life, despite being critically ill, bullied and homeless on the streets of London for, I think you say, 5 months. You had this inner strength, your dream of being in pursuit of achievements, greatness and service. So please tell us about these early dark days, Tony, and how you lived, denied to accept what life has given you and change your life for good. What a story.
I was born in Gostivar, North Macedonia, into a family of restaurateurs and farmers. And very loving family, very hardworking people with a sort of desire to invest in their children so we can have a better life. And I think every parent's job is to really provide that kind of grounding where the child can grow and be educated. So my parents were quite huge on education. So, I had the loving energy, but at the same time, being brought up in a former communist country, we had the challenges one for one. Just because of a different ethnicity, you weren't really allowed to be somebody. You weren't really allowed to go to the best schools or really achieve something. You were treated like a third-class citizen. And from a very young age, deep down, I knew that we all equal in the eyes of God. Yet you see these discrepancies in society across every single layer. And then, you hear things about everybody believes in God, but in their version of God. And, everybody believes we're equal in the eyes of God, but then you see how the society is set up. So not only I saw a lot of injustice and I saw a lot of abuse in the family environment, and women were treated very badly by men back then. But also I experienced the same abuse myself. I experienced bullying at school just for being of an Albanian nationality in a fully Macedonian school. And my way of overcoming those challenges is really digging deep into education and being the best I could be. It was almost this fighting spirit.
Yes.
So my parents taught me, don't argue with people. Show them with actions who you are. And one of those actions is becoming one of the best students in every school that I attended. But just as I was going through this illness strike, I was in hospital for 2 years. I hardly survived. And basically, my parents took me to the very same spiritual teachers who, when I was born, told them one day I'm going to be a master healer. I'm going to travel around the world and help people. So, they took me back from hospital where the doctors told them that I'm going to die in 3 days. So my mother called my father, who was back then working in Bosnia. We had our own restaurants in Bosnia, Croatia, and different parts of former Yugoslavia. So they came in to prepare for a funeral. But then they took me to this guy who, my parents both believed in his spiritual teachings and in his healing abilities because he helped my brother cure from epilepsy.
Wow.
And he was there when I was born. So, when my parents presented me to him in this hut in Macedonia, somewhere in the mountains, apparently he laughed and he said, "Oh, this is just a test for him. He'll be fine." So, but this is where the first moment when I started becoming curious about the unseen. How is it possible that, top doctors, military doctors could not heal me? And this old man living in the mountains of Macedonia with no access to education, electricity, could start healing me. So, my sort of curiosity about learning the spiritual side of how can you help somebody heal started back then. And
Yeah.
this guy taught me a lot of healing techniques. So 6 months down the line, I fully recovered from an illness that was labeled as incurable.
Wow.
So this is where really my curiosity about continuing to study both science but also spiritual development started, so I can help more people.
Mm.
And then I went to the one of the best engineering universities in former Yugoslavia. Started my degree in Zagreb, and just as I finished the first years, the civil war fell upon us, former Yugoslavia. I was conscripted in the army, and I fought in an army in a war that deep down killed my soul and saw atrocities no teenager should ever see.
Mm.
Fast forward, my life was saved, and I end up on the streets of London. So, for the first 4 months, I lived homeless, and I was trying to make sense of, how on earth everything that I believed in collapsed.
Mm.
Your identity collapses, your country collapses, the war keeps raging, whether I will ever see my parents again. Frankly, I didn't care about myself, Lord Russell. I cared about the people left behind. And then trying to make sense with my mother's decision to save my life and me trying to save her life. So it was very difficult moment. So the first 4 months in London, I was just crying and trying to make sense of the trauma that I had during the war, that from a happy childhood and, all of those dreams of becoming a great engineer and, making my parents proud collapsed as a result of the Civil War. So then the whole thing started.
Okay, incredible. I mean, let's just say you described your life at this time as excruciating pain, as you called it, which also drove you to overcome every adversity life put before you and invest in learning how to break through your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, relationship, social and career and financial barriers, because that's what you're kind of talking about there, Tony, in a way. Your inner strength is incredible, Tony, and an inspiration to us all. But how did you get yourself out of that 5 months off the street and break those barriers to get yourself into a university, to get some
One of
support
the
you needed?
main things that have helped me, Lord Russell, it's my values that my parents instilled
Yes.
within me since a very young age, and which means we all had very working habits, meaning sort of through work you can change your life,
Yeah.
and through humility and through acceptance and through love and pretty much adaptability. So from a very young age, I started making money. Starting at age 7, I worked in the farm and selling farm produce to the local Gypsy, Macedonian, Turkish, and Albanian community. So for me, working as a habit was inbuilt with me since I was a kid. But
Yeah.
also this desire to help humanity not to go through the stages of what we went through civil war in Yugoslavia, seeing the genocide, seeing so many innocent people being murdered and killed, was one of the drives within me to become the best teacher I can be, so I can help leaders, I can help politicians, I can help businesses, I can help people understand that what they're actually preaching and telling other people, which means we are all from one creation, but we have so many differences and we end up in all those conflicts because from a very young age, I believe that together we can create more. And, to honor God for me is to honor one another.
Absolutely. And I agree with you completely, Tony, because what people forget is that the former Yugoslavia, as it was called, was a big war. It was a genocidal war, and it was right in the middle of Europe. People seem to
Correct.
forget that happened.
Yes.
So close to everybody, and you were part of it. And that learning curve in the army, learning what happened, building yourself. That was a character to drive yourself forward to where you are today. Fantastic. Really is.
But also what I want you to understand, Lord Russell, is how so quickly through polarization, through nationalism, through spreading hatred, conflict can happen. It can turn people against each other. So I really wanted to understand the psychology of that so I can help more people not to fall to those traps.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
we've seen even now, 34 years down the line, what happened down there, we see it now happening around the world. We
do.
see it in different places where it's conflict and war right now. And we're seeing horrible, horrible images on TV that somehow is being normalized in today's life. And together, we should not stand for that. We should really collaborate and find peaceful solutions so we can all thrive together.
I quite agree, 100%. Absolutely correct in what you're saying there. Totally, totally mad. The world is at the moment in the way it's functioning, and the wars that we've got, in the Middle East, out to, of course, the Russian war with Ukraine and others dotted around various parts of the world. It's just shocking, isn't it? And all for the same reasons, normally. Sadly, no one
Yeah, I
seems to
mean, we
learn
saw
from
also
humanity.
what happened to us in UK,
Yeah.
when we had the both leave and Brexit. I mean, the country was split in half. I
Mm.
was on a plane working with a client in Menorca on our way back when the results was done. The entire plane was arguing. We're talking about families,
Dear.
grandparents with their children, children with their parents with their grandparents. And, I remember saying to my client back then, I said, we just open up an evil pot now.
Yeah,
And for me, I really believe in solving problems peacefully and solving problems with, a collaborative, mindful way, because, we can always have problems, Russell.
we can.
And, we also have the ability to find meaningful solutions to those meaningful problems that we as a society, as individuals, as businesses, as government creates. So for me, that was one of the many other drives which I wanted to become the best in what I do and then invest everything I work. And sometimes I work 3 to 4 jobs. First and foremost, to educate myself and pay for my own education. Secondly, to help my family in war. And thirdly, to invest in my continuous growth. And I really emphasize the importance for anybody who's listening to our podcast,
Mm.
the importance of continuous growth, because life, the only, I think, common denominator is change.
Yeah.
Life changes every single day. Thus, we need to be prepared, better prepared for the changes that are now and the changes that are coming. So we can have more adaptability, more resilience, and more mindful way of solving those problems that life throws at us.
Absolutely correct. That's very well said. And of course, following the financial crisis of 2008, you used the opportunity, which is a little bit bizarre, but I can understand it, to be made redundant from a job you loved and spent the next 4 years consulting and using a proportion of your money to start your own business and honor your calling to take your work and mission to positively impact the lives of 1 billion people. I mean, let's just mention that again. 1 billion people. I mean, it's incredible. Now, this is a special story indeed, Tony. Please explain some more about this. 1 billion people.
I'm going back to when I was a kid, Lord Russell. We used
Okay.
to have a terrace in my family farm. And my father bought me a telescope when I was a kid. So
Oh,
I used to watch the stars. And back then I used to have 5 dreams. One of them was to be a captain of a starship. The other one was to be an engineer. The other one was to be an architect. And the other one was to be an author. And the other one was to be an educator.
and one of
So
those dreams came true. Obviously, we'll get into that
yes,
story as we
and
go through.
looking at those stars, I remember the 1 billion stars kept going into my head, into my
Yeah.
head, into my head. And I used to say to myself, one day I'm going to inspire 1 billion people. As a kid, I used to laugh at those things. And I had a friend from school who also was very interested in astronomy.
Mm,
And, she said to me, I think we were like 12 back then. And she went like, you will do it. But, she wasn't laughing. She really mean it.
yeah.
And I was laughing with myself, saying, that's impossible. How the little me from Macedonia, who, nobody even ever heard, apart from if you mention Alexander the Great, will be able to do that. But then as I started my business, as I went through my professional growth in technology and starting impacting and really building companies and really making companies very profitable, managing multi-billion pound technology
Mm,
programs and being given those responsibilities, I started realizing that the power within and all those dreams suddenly are starting to give me this voice to go out there and combine my knowledge in technology, my knowledge in business, my knowledge in management, my knowledge in leadership, with my knowledge in very different forms of healing the body, mind, the soul. And also all the different training that I've done over the 15 years, talking
mm.
about Tony Robbins, we're talking about Greg Canfield, we're talking about Brian Tracy, we're talking about Dr. Jordi Martini, who's still my mentor. So I went and pursued knowledge consistently. And I said to myself, having looked at all the problems in the corporate world and having looked at what happened during the financial crisis of 2008, I really wanted to combine all of those and create methodologies for
Mm.
people to transform both leadership, business, in their personal life, in their relationship life, and give them methodologies that they can actually effectively and efficiently create the changes required for them to get the results they want. So, after the redundancy, I invested a lot of money continuing hiring different mentors and coaches. And I'm talking about people who are billionaires, because I really wanted to be mentored by the best of the best so I can become the best for the people to be the best. So out of that, I started another little MBA program called the Key Person of Influence, through which I published my first book, A Path to Wisdom.
Yeah,
and I wrote it
later.
for one of the clients that I used to have back then, and for what he's gone through, that I supported him through to become one of the top CEOs in the city of London. And with that in mind, I put the 25 principles underneath an umbrella of acronym ALARM. And the acronym ALARM came to me when I was working in Switzerland as a teenager. I used to work during my holidays in Switzerland for a company who produces cables for the entire world. And I wanted to understand the same sophisticated alarms that we've created for banks, for instance.
Yeah.
When it comes to the fire engine, when it comes to police, when it comes to safes, our intelligence have those alarms built in for everything that goes wrong into our body. But the problem becomes we don't listen.
You're
I wanted
correct.
to combine those things in the acronym ALARM, which means when you acknowledge love, you achieve results and you manifest miracles. And that miracle is individual to every human being. Meaning, if you go through the methodology and you have a physical alignment and you have a condition and you want to heal, you can use that for that. If you have problems in your relationship, you can use it for that. If you have problems in your professional career and you want to grow and you become very successful, you can use the same methodology. And then if you want to become what I would say conscious leader, somebody who exhibits excellence in everything they do, you can use the same methodology. Meaning, as alarm brings you all those challenges, your body will give you those alarms for you to listen and to develop your intuition, to develop your mindfulness, to develop your responses to challenges, and also to learn how to work with your brain better.
Yep, I totally agree. It's all fantastic stuff that you're saying there. It really is very inspirational. And of course, you did found in 2010, you founded, I think I've pronounced this right, Savida Solutions Limited, a technology consulting company. And a very interesting, shall we say, but sort of almost a change in direction from what you're just talking about there in a way, Tony. But your love for technology is coming in here, isn't it, in 2010?
Absolutely. My love for technology, I used basically the company Savida Technologies to help me to build the TGS Cognition Limited, which is now the training and development company that I have now, and it's a global business. So even in today's business, in my company today, technology and helping clients with technology is one of the things that I solve for my clients. For instance, in the last couple of years, I worked quite a lot on AI and providing AI solution for my clients. And with some of them, we even built a custom-made AI. With others, I'm involved with, things that are very science fiction, but I'm helping them because of my tech background. I can help them and direct them into clarifying what they need, like to build space ship-like technologies, like the ones that we've seen in Star Trek, for instance, when it comes to, creating transport technology, when it comes to creating, holodeck. And I talk about it in my book, #Loneliness, which I published in 2016. And then I have clients that I work on creating businesses. During COVID, I help clients build technologies to be able to overcome the problems that COVID presented to the businesses and to the countries. So, technology is part of that, apart from me using my human behavioral expertise and coaching and training and NLP and cognitive behavior to really address the mental and emotional side that stops many people become extremely successful and honor their greatness.
Absolutely right. And of course, in 2 years later, in 2012, you founded the Velvet Journey, a training, coaching, and mentoring company, both focusing really on assisting gay men to overcome personal, relationship, and professional challenges. I mean, this, I would say, is more aligned to your incredible coaching and mentoring skills and your ability to fully engage with people successfully, Tony. What challenges, though, did you experience here? And plus, of course, the successes too.
Having grown up in extremely conservative environment,
Mm,
Lord Russell, it was very difficult journey for me to accept myself as I am. Now, it took many, many years. And I think partly I'm very grateful to all the people and all the teachers and also being here in London, where, you don't feel different from everybody else.
correct.
And, UK has done incredible work in equality and diversity and, acceptance of LGBT rights. But unfortunately, not everywhere in the world. But, the trauma comes from a very young age when you experience all the horrible things that makes you totally closed down. So I
Mm,
had to overcome another crisis, which was huge, my identity crisis. As a result of that, I started meeting a lot of people experiencing the same pain, the same, disconnection from family, although you love your family with all your heart, but just for the fact that you happen to be gay, they, disown you in some places. I've heard some horrible stories. So, I have my own horrible stories, but when you hear other people, and I started having so many men coming to my workshops, hearing their stories, my pain healed as a result of helping those people transition and transform and embrace their authentic self. And authenticity for me has been always one of the pillars of the methodologies that I teach. So, working with thousands of men, and, it started as gay men, but then I started having bisexual men and I started having straight men. Then eventually I started having everybody's friends. So it became more of a general thing after the Velvet Journey was founded. And having helped so many people, my missions and my purpose start evolving. I
incredible.
started getting on media. I started having a lot of exposure. I started helping a lot of people. I started getting involved with people with HIV, people who had HIV and couldn't tell their parents. So, my mission kept evolving, but through it all, one thing that had in common, I was really helping people heal inside out and using
Absolutely.
all of my knowledge to be able to create a better understanding of thyself and better way of actually helping people transition from a conflicting situation in a more accepting and not and loving situation where different parties who are in conflict can actually go back and focus on what matters, which is love.
Absolutely
So,
correct. I
and
quite agree.
after that, as I saw more people, both men and women, come into my workshops, I had 4 workshops. And the first one is be yourself. Everybody else is taken. This was based on Oscar Wilde. So, having studied his life, I said, I'm going to honor Oscar Wilde with that phrase. And I created a workshop with that to help people understand what does it mean in today's world to be yourself? And everything that comes up for them and help them heal and transition into more greater states of awareness and mindfulness. And then the other one is about love to communicate. We see a lot of people losing their plot when they get challenged.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
whether
That
it's in
happens
the
all the time. That really does.
whether in corporate world or whether at home or in relationship, or the worst part is the inner self-critic dialogue. So I created Love to Communicate workshop. And then the other one was Fear to Freedom.
Mm,
We have fears basically based on our brain amygdala, can make you do a lot of things that you regret for the rest of your life.
yes.
And how do you then help people, go from this sensory input that engage with your amygdala, then sends all the signals to your hypothalamus, and then it releases the adrenaline and cortisol and creates all those stress hormones, which then stresses your body, which makes you make bad decision. You're not
Yes.
productive. You're not energized. You're constantly in stress. How do I help those people to turn this fear into fuel for growth, fuel for success? And that workshop was also very attended. And then the fourth workshop was all about self-love. I'm not sure about you, but since I was young, I was taught to love other people. I remember one of the first teachers when he put me here in London in a very small room in Victoria. He went like, face the mirror, tell yourself I love you. I started laughing. It was a foreign
Yeah, that's
language to
very,
love
very
yourself.
true. I think, going back as a youngster, I can always remember, oh, she loves herself, he loves himself. Well, why shouldn't you love yourself? You're absolutely correct in that way. Because if you can't love yourself, how do you expect others to love you? And it's quite a simple process, isn't it, really? Um,
Absolutely. So,
bit of a
we
enigma going
use
back.
those words, if you can't love yourself, how can you love other people? But
Mhm.
in reality, Russell, even today in my work, for me, when you have any form of illness, there's some form of judgment within thyself that people are not addressing.
Yes.
So, understanding the psychology and human behavior and emotional intelligence can really help people get back into balance and get back into the awakening the inner doctor so they can come back into great physical health. And at the same time, it's sort of when it comes to loving thyself, because it can be dangerous if you don't have boundaries around that love, meaning
Yes.
you don't want to become a narcissist with loving yourself.
Oh,
So there needs
absolutely.
to be a great balance of what it means to love yourself, but in relationship to others as well. So you
Yes.
don't become self-centered and self-loathing and serving, but
Correct.
being able to love yourself in a healthy way so you can love others and you can love thy neighbor.
Yeah, and having humility with other people as well. And because all this skills you've learned and you're addressing now and you're talking to us about, it's absolutely amazing. And you also published your first book based on all of this in 2014, A Path to Wisdom, which expanded your business and grew your credibility authority to reach a worldwide audience. I mean, it was getting mad, wasn't it? Your abilities are endless, it seems, Tony. And it's incredible. So this book, tell us more
Yes, I
about it, A
mean,
Path
Path
to
to
Wisdom.
Wisdom, how to live a balanced, healthy, and peaceful life, was
Mm.
born through 3 decades of overcoming hardship and then trying to integrate that. And it's a very substantial book. It's almost like a life manual because that's what I wanted to produce since I was a kid, by the way. And
Oh,
the
right.
idea came back in the 70s when my father bought the first color TV Grundig from Germany. And it was the first color TV in my town. So all the kids were coming in there and I was being put in charge, especially me being always more advanced when it comes to tech to
Mm.
set it up. And back then you had to go up the roof, set up the aerial in the right direction. And it
Yes.
was the first remote control. And it wasn't like today's remote control. You had to actually set up the remote control to work with the different channels.
Yes.
So, and I remember the manual came in English, in German, in French, and in Russian.
Wow.
And I didn't know any of those languages. So I forced myself, I used a dictionary to translate it and then set up the TV. Now, I back then I also when I used to see conflict in my family, and there were many conflicts in them, I wanted to write a book, and I used to have conversation with God when I was watching through my telescope, saying, "Why don't parents have a manual when they bring children into this world so
Yes.
they can be healthy?" And then I would say, "Why do children have a manual so we can become a healthy adults when we grow up?"
Yeah.
And that manual became my book, A Path to Wisdom. So, it has almost about 100,000 words in there. And it's a very substantial study manual that every time you read it will bring you different knowledge. So it's not something you read and you leave. It's something that it's written with a transcendental language, meaning no matter what the time, no matter what the challenge, you can go back. And some of the questions that I put in there are timeless, meaning every time you ask that question, you're going to get a new answer.
Absolutely. Having a manual for a parent or for a child, in a way, kind of dehumanizes us, doesn't it? Because we're all different. We all think differently. We all act differently. Children are all different. We're all individuals completely. But it's an interesting point. But, as an internationally recognized TEDx speaker, multi-award winning life strategist, I hasten to add, business coach and professional speaker, you have authored several award winning and best-selling self-improvement and self-mastery books, as we're just talking about now, which is incredible. I mean, please let us know more about these amazing publications, because I know there's many of them. And you've written so many pieces here, haven't you, Tony?
Yes, I mean, after I published the book, I didn't expect the kind of success, the kind of awards
Oh,
that
it
it
came, didn't
received.
it?
So it was very humbling, and
Yes.
we received almost 5,000 emails from people around the world who
Wow.
poured their emotions. And I promised myself back then that whoever writes me a personal message, I will personally respond. So I actually responded to all those 5,000 people.
Wow.
And then as I started traveling around the world and teaching my program, which I teach now globally, I started seeing one of the common problems in society with growing of technology and
Mm.
apps and social media, which is loneliness. So I saw how loneliness is starting impacting every layer of our society,
Oh,
starting in corporate world where people are lonely. I've been in offices when I've trained the CEOs and executive coaching session when people in the same team did not know each other.
oh,
You know,
it's regularly.
and most of them, they email each other. They don't even turn around, although they might be sitting a desk behind.
Mm.
I work in one of the Citibank offices, and people wouldn't even know their names of next colleague.
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
incredible. Because years ago, going back to the 80s and the 90s, in my recognition, I can remember it. People
no,
would go out for lunch and socialize and
correct.
talk after work, go to the pub, have a few drinks, get to know each other. That doesn't happen anymore, does it?
No, no. So basically, then I saw how people at the airport don't speak anymore. People, when you take the bus in London, don't speak. When you take the tube, don't speak. It started becoming like weird for you to randomly strike a conversation. And in Macedonia, I grew up, by the time you go to school, you've spoken to every single person in the
Yeah,
entire town.
absolutely.
So,
Yeah,
I still have that kind of abilities, and I love connecting with people, random people.
yes,
Just strike a conversation. Sometimes you can just have a conversation that person feels relieved and they feel enlightened.
yeah.
So when they leave the conversation, they go like, oh my God, I met this stranger, blah, blah, blah. But then I noticed that also, with families going to restaurants where children are on iPads
Mm.
and nobody's speaking to each other.
Oh,
And then I started trying to go and research the science behind loneliness, how that impacts our brain, how that impacts our physiology, emotions, and all of that. And when I understood the toxicity of loneliness, I decided to write the book #Loneliness. And in there, I really talk about the different aspects of loneliness. But one thing I wanted to really talk about is my journey through loneliness. So I used my own vulnerability and
mm.
described it in detail what happened to me and the kind of loneliness that it created as a result of this disconnection within me.
Yeah,
And then,
do you think so, Jay? Do you think COVID had a lot to do with increasing loneliness amongst people? Because since COVID,
absolutely,
people don't talk at all anymore, do they?
yes.
It's amazing.
I mean, funny, the sales of my book that was published in 2016
Yeah.
increased during COVID. And I had people again approaching me through COVID saying, how on earth did you know what's going to happen when it was written like 4 years behind? And also in that book, I talk about artificial intelligence when nobody was talking about it.
Mm.
And, I was warning humanity as a result of that. My TED talk, Technological Armageddon, a wake-up call, which now is both on TED platform and TEDx platform, where I delivered in US, and I opened the conference with that talk, where I really say both the advantages and disadvantages of AI. The advantages are amazing, but also the disadvantages are very, very worrying for humanity. So, I wanted to deliver something bigger than that. So in the #loneliness, I talk about both on a psychological level, what happens to us, the dangers of that is even more dangerous than smoking 20 cigarettes a day to
Mm.
feel lonely and disconnected. And also I'm talking about the biology of what happens when you are lonely. And I talk about the loneliness in elderly people. And then I go back into the human energy field, how that loneliness then through our field, without you even saying something, spreads into global consciousness. And then how technology then spreads that loneliness and increases anxiety, depression amongst people who now live based on likes.
Well, of course, you're quite correct, the social media aspects. But of course, people don't expect successful chairmen or CEOs or business leaders to suffer with loneliness, but they do.
They
And
do.
and more so probably, and more damaging in some ways, because everyone expects them to be this leader, and as the door closes from the office, they're into that lonely world. That's quite distressing, isn't it? Very
It
distressing.
is very distressing, Lord Russell. I mean, I've delivered now almost 40,000 coaching and training
Mm.
hours. And I worked with thousands of people. And one common pattern amongst executive and I would say very successful people is loneliness and what happens in the family and in the bedroom area, which
Absolutely.
means they can be very, very successful when it comes to, being their career professionally and making money. But now I have about 50 people that I've helped, some of them divorced, other people restored the love within the relationship. Because, some of them that I helped them divorce, they were in a really, really bad mental, emotional state that affected their career, their productivity, their companies,
Oh, absolutely.
and
Can affect the
also
whole of your
affected their
life.
children, affected their wives. So basically, as part of this work that I was doing, many of my clients they start calling me, "You are the divorce with love coach."
Well, it's not a
So,
bad thing to be called, is it? Quite a
yeah.
nice title, really.
As COVID happened,
Yeah.
I sat down. I was in Dominican Republic delivering my client Greater Heights vital planning training, which is the exclusive training I've been doing now for 12 years. And I had 3 clients back to back. Those are 5 days or 10 days training. So as I finished with my last client, and she manages, she has an incredible story behind because she was abused also. And then I helped her build multi-million pound businesses helping
Mm,
the abused in America.
right.
And when I came to England, the COVID, we went into lockdown within a week. And my flights were canceled. My training was canceled. Some of them we went on Zoom straight away, so business as usual. And then I had to wait until, when they opened the travel corridors again. But what I did is I sat down and I spent 10 days of, my partner is a cardiologist. So I wanted to understand, and I have a lot of doctors who are my private clients that I've been coaching them for years.
Mm,
I wanted to understand from a healthcare perspective, the impact this is going to have on the world. Because from a business, I already done it. I did my analysis, both advantage and disadvantage, it depends what businesses you are. And
yes.
then also on societal level and country level. And that, a room was filled with white papers and with my notes. And usually people who follow me, I still do this when I work with my clients. Out of that, I turned that into a book and why those things are happening and what's going to happen as we go through COVID. And the book was called The Unfakeable Code, Take Back Mental and Emotional Control, lead authentically and live freely on your own. So
Mm,
the third book plus the fourth, rather the fifth, were born during COVID. And,
absolutely.
in here, it's all about a 5-step framework to really understand the different personas and the kind of masks we put in when we're collapsing inside. And
Wonderful.
we show them to the world like the, business as usual, for instance. But in reality, we're really collapsing within. So
Absolutely.
I'm showing them how to be able to identify those coping mechanisms that those different personas, which originate from a very young age, that affect you in your adulthood and how you can go back into authenticity. And from that space, being able to lead, live, and love freely on your terms.
I
And
quite
then from
agree.
that, I wrote with a few other authors. We wrote a book called Purposeful Leadership. And my role in that, because I deal with a lot of burnout and stress with a lot of leaders. So
Mm,
I wrote in there about the stress and the burnout that affects leaders globally. And then another hobby that I have is I love writing poems and songs. So with a group of very famous European authors, I published my first 12 poems. And at some point, I will have my own book around that. So, that became the fifth book, the sixth book. Then I published A Path to Excellence after COVID, which is truly about 8-step methodology that people can actually follow to
mm,
truly unlock their potential within. Meaning, how do you bring excellence in whatever you choose in your life, both personal and professional excellence? And now in January, it's my 7th book coming out, which is purely on business and entrepreneurship. How do you really, for those people who are working in 9 to 5, but they're not happy with their jobs, they want to really pursue entrepreneurship. How do you go from there into building a very successful business doing what you love? And also, how do you evolve businesses to 7, 8, and 9-figure businesses, which I've been doing for a decade now with different clients?
perfect. And of course, it's not just books, is it, Tony? Your works also include filmmaking and executive production. Now, this, to me, does sound really exciting. Films. What amazing films have you produced?
So the first one was in a partnership with a client that they hired me to do their business coaching. And as part of that, they felt so inspired because, the problems in the business reflected what was going on at home. And this is the first client that they took the courage for us to collaborate and to show to the world that middle upper class English family, very successful, also they have a lot of problems. And we wanted to really encourage a lot of people to come forward with their problems. So, we agreed to put the camera and film live the coaching sessions. As part of that, we created the Live in My Illusion, the Truth Hurts, and the title itself speaks quite a lot. Meaning, my client was the entrepreneur and also running a technology business, was living a total illusion and two different lives. And, bringing then his wife, she started coaching with me, relationship coaching, and that documentary, we squeezed 3 years of coaching into a very powerful documentary. And that won over 25 global film awards. So we started going around the films. Then I was invited to do a lot of speaking engagements for different film festivals. And then I started getting a lot of different people to work with me privately. And as a result of that, then the next film project happened, which got released recently, which is The Truth About Reading, which I produced as an executive producer with an Emmy Award producer in America, which tackled another big problem. So the first one tackles the midlife crisis that men go through, and also everything that we hide from the world, but also from within ourselves. That, those lies that we told ourselves for so many times, they become truth until somebody, an expert like me, comes and challenges you until you recognize the truth of what you are doing and how is that affecting you and everything else. So this one, on the other hand, is all about the growing problem in America and worldwide, which is illiteracy and how that affects society. So, and now it's next year, I'm launching a new documentary project, which is with my new book, which is called Into Your Divinity. And this is about, I'm inviting 5 unique, successful people to come forward, and where I work with them for the entire year and film their journeys. And then I create a unique episode for each one of them, what it means to really step into your divinity. First and foremost, for you as an individual. Secondly, for the people you love. Thirdly, for the society you live in. Fourthly, for the country you are. And then fifthly, for the world.
Yeah. And let's have a look at that a little bit further, because over the last 30 years, you have delivered over 25,000 coaching, mentoring, healing and training hours, helping individuals from all professions, including, and the list is vast, I can assure you, everybody, who have A-list celebrities, royals, senior executives, business owners, entrepreneurs, corporate clients, global leaders, politicians, doctors and lawyers we've already spoken about, bankers, speakers, coaches, and authors to achieve their aspirations and go from where they are to where they know they want to be. I mean, this renders me speechless, Tony, quite honestly. Now, that's a first, I can assure you, for me to be speechless, but you have truly reached the pinnacle of success here, deservedly so too. I mean, that's massive, isn't it?
It is huge. I mean, I always feel, humbled when certain individuals reach out for my help and to guide them through a very intimate problem.
Yes.
And the more successful you become, those problems become huge. And then it becomes very difficult to find somebody you can trust who is an expert in their field, that they can support you and guide you in a way that you create the results that you want. Because, the more you are in the public eye, the pressure is bigger.
Yeah.
The bigger the company, the bigger I would say, the management of it, the bigger the challenges become for that individual. And then I help them overcome those things, but also build that resilience, that adaptability, and that mindfulness way to respond to stressing and challenging situations or people. Because, if you get charged at work and you go at home, your children will pick up that energy. Your partner will pick up that energy. So therefore, you'll create a lot of conflict at home. You might create a harmony at work, but you'll expect conflict at home. And vice versa. Some people have harmony at home, and then they experience massive conflict at work, which either situations give you stress and give you illness.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen this happen so many times over the years. I really have. That's such a true thing to say. It really is.
So also I've seen it working almost 15 years in the corporate world, how this affected all the people, the CEOs that I worked with. And when I left the corporate world, I promised myself not to be that kind of CEO and not to also allow the clients to remain in that kind of energy, but how do I create that transformation, that breakthrough, that they can work in an environment which is extremely challenging, but being able to be in balance with thyself, and how to build those skills where you really make informed decisions. You build an objective mind. You have a great memory. You have a great way of communicating when the challenge happens. Because, I see everybody, when things are nice, Lord Russell, it's fine. You don't really see the true character of the individual. The true character comes when that individual is going through hardship or is being challenged at their core.
Mm.
This is where I see the true character coming out. Sometimes I do it on purpose, by the way. I will challenge my clients to see how they respond. And then
It's
I will
good to
go
do
deep
that, isn't it?
down.
Taking them out of their comfort zone and seeing
Yes.
how they react. That's what it's about, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, I don't call it comfort zone. I call it supposedly comfort zone. So, I
That's
call it
okay.
more of a familiar zone, where
Okay.
people are familiar, because nobody is in comfort when they're in that zone, by the way, because
That's
deep
true.
down they want more.
Mm.
So it's how do you take them from that familiar zone into new territory? So, that part of my dream of being a captain of spaceship, this is exactly what I do with my clients. I take them into a territory where they are afraid, but they can explore freely on their terms, so they can learn, they can grow, and they can expand their vision, they can expand their knowledge, they can expand their purpose, they can expand their prosperity, and then become philanthropic. And in philanthropic, you start really now giving to the world to the maximum, because all of your needs are met. So you're no longer worrying about money. You built a whole system behind you.
Yeah.
And now how do you use proportion of that to do incredible work for humanity? So, I have some clients, Lord Russell, that they don't need my business coaching. They don't need my wealth building coaching. What they need is how to help them create things on the philanthropy side, how to spend their money, by the way.
Yes.
So, I feel very honored to be able to do what I do.
Absolutely. And you do have many fantastic client references. And by the way, everybody, I know this because in my research, you've got many references from many key people, saying how great you are at your role. But I've chosen this one as it's short yet commanding. And I quote from Oliver P., who is a CEO. Tony leaves his clients feeling energized, enlightened, empowered, and with a sense of calm, clarity, and inner peace. This quote tells you everything about you, Tony, doesn't it, really? It's just a nice, nice quote from Oliver P., a CEO.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I observe a lot, Russell, and I think you probably relate that with yourself. Coming into that space where you have inner peace, it's priceless.
Yes, it is.
And this is what my name Tony means priceless. And my middle name, Yeton, in Albanian means to live life. And Selimi in Arabic means peace. So to live your life in peace is priceless. So, that name was given me since I was a kid. But it was only later on when I published my first book that it made me realize that my name had a purpose. And to bring my clients into that level of awareness where they can nurture thyself in a way that they create inner peace. And from that inner peace, you can function extremely energetically. And, you don't need an outside motivation for you to do the things that you love doing. So for me, a lot of my work is to really understand the conflicts that happens in the mind and how to then transform the mind, both the conscious and the subconscious, to work together to help my client exactly create the results they want.
Absolutely. And this works because you have invested a lifetime into the study of engineering, technology, science, neuroscience, CBT, NLP, transformational life coaching, holistical healing modalities, business growth, wealth building, project management, organizational behavior, people management, human psychology, performance and productivity. There's a whole wealth here. Basically, what makes people tick, take action and achieve stellar outcomes. And this is sensational dedication, Tony, isn't it? What you achieved in your lifetime here. It's incredible.
I mean, one of the things that my parents taught me when I was a kid, Lord Russell, especially in a society where you're oppressed, they said to me, like, the more skills you learn to help solve more problem for other people, the more you're going to grow, the more you're going to become successful. So, I dedicated my life to learning so many different skills meaning no matter what problem my client presents to me, I have a toolbox of skills and knowledge and methodologies that I've created to be able straight away to help them in most effective and efficient way. Because the biggest commodity nowadays, it is time.
It is.
And how you spend that time matters. And it also determines how successful you become, how healthy you become, how loving you become, how your relationship becomes, how socially you become. So really, it's part of my work with many of my clients. So vital planning, it's basically the 5-day experience. It's so deep, meaning I can go like an onion, peeling all the different layers.
Yeah.
But through that experience, we create a very detailed plan, an expansion of one's vision. So, most people have a very limited vision of who they are. And when I come in there, because during those time together, we spend 8 hours for 5 days with some clients for 10 days to really create most amazing life and most breakthroughs. So sometimes clients bring their executive team, sometimes they bring their wives, and sometimes they bring their children. And sometimes, like for instance, now when I was in US and Tahiti and Bora Bora, my clients brought their children. For me, it's heartbreaking to hear when 14 years old kids are taking depression drugs.
Oh, shocking.
Or ADHD drugs. All the different labels that children are being labeled today. In a very dynamic world, there's a much better, more effective way to help a child than to help an adult. At the moment, I have a client from US who are here doing my training, by the way. So I finished today, like literally 15 minutes before our broadcast. So both her husband and her child are labeled ADHD. And they've been taking medication, and I made them read the side effects. For the first time in 3 years, they're reading the side effects of the medication they've been taking for 3 years.
Because children can't be children anymore, can they? They're brought up into be almost adults when they're born. It's just mad.
It's a different workload, Russell, and I think partly to do it with social media and evolvement, the evolution of technology. Yes, I love technology, but also I can see the dangers of technology. That's why I always say take everything with a pinch of salt. And maintain that kind of balance. When I get children who are arrogant towards their parents and they bring them on training, and one of the things that parents would complain is like they spend 18 hours on TikTok, and learning from TikTok. So I would challenge them with questions that really make them think. So, with one of the very arrogant childs, one of my clients, I said to him, if you can prove to me, I will give you 5 days. At the end of the 5 days, you make $1,000 with using your phone. I will coach you for free to build a business.
Wow.
Guess what? So far, I haven't had anybody to prove me wrong. So most children are using it for wasting time. And therefore, it impacts their psychology. Going forward, we're going to have so many mental and emotional issues that today's generations that are growing up will have. So it will leave a comet kind of mark behind of mental and emotional, just the way COVID left.
Yep. Yes, absolutely true. And because you are an executive producer, and you mentioned earlier on of the truth about reading documentary, which is about the impact of illiteracy in the USA. You didn't mention it earlier on, Tony, but also co-creating The Living of My Illusion, plus the Truth Hurts award-winning life coaching documentary on Amazon Plus. More amazing achievements and episodes in your life. I mean, the thing I have to say is, where do you find the time to do all of this? It's incredible.
Yeah. Living on the streets of London, going back when I was homeless,
yes, of course.
I slept about 4 hours. And then when I got my first job, I worked from like 5 a.m. till midnight. So
Yes.
I had no room for me to sleep.
Wow.
So, and then I also knew that I will need to get more jobs to be able to afford the education that I wanted.
Of course, yeah.
So basically, in the first 10 years, I worked 3 to 4 jobs and I slept 4 hours a night. So, back then, a Red Bull was my go-to. Because I'm not a big drinker on coffee, but Red Bull was giving me wings, yes.
Yeah,
and then I stopped that once I achieved my objective of graduating from UCL, obtaining my degree, and then starting my professional career. Then I started to live a bit more healthier and understand, the stuff. But I also developed a habit of actually sleeping maximum 5.5 hours a day.
Yeah, that does happen to us all, I think. Yeah, I don't think I get more than 5 hours sleep these days myself. Always wake up early.
Yeah,
It's the
I
way it
remember
is.
also my parents were like that. The older they got, the less sleep they needed.
Yeah.
They wanted
I-
to really maximize their daily time. And for me, with all the projects that I'm working on at the moment,
yeah.
for instance, like here, I've sent the book to the publishers, but at the same time, we are now working on the Spanish translation of 4 of my books because the other 2 I've co-published. So now the fifth book is my book. So I have 5 books plus 3. So the 5 books will also go into the Spanish translation, and it's a lot of work in there. On top of that, I have a lot of work with my clients, and then I'm trying to maximize the time to also spend with my partner and the people I love.
Absolutely. And as Paul Trevelyan said to me earlier on this year when I had Paul on the show, a lovely artist, Paul Trevelyan, fantastic. He said, whatever you do, get out of bed, get up early. If you stay in bed, you die in bed. And I think there's some reality to that in a way, isn't there, really?
I agree.
Live
I mean, my
every
parents told me
moment.
that also,
Oh,
Lord
wow.
Russell. Yes,
Fascinating.
and also we have a saying in the Macedonian language.
Mm.
I'm not sure how it's going to sound, and in Albanian, in English. The person who wakes up early, he grabs 2 lucks, meaning you become lucky twice.
Yes. Well, the early bird catches the worm was one I always used to hear as a child. Not
Similar
so
like
much
that,
these
yeah.
days. Yeah, similar
Yes,
thing.
absolutely. But I mean, it makes sense because more time you have, you can
Definitely.
achieve more
Of
if you
course you
use
can.
that time effectively and efficiently.
Absolutely. And the more people you meet as well, and the bigger you grow yourself and grow your network and do all the things you want to do and
Well,
improve
that's
life.
where it comes to, standing on the shoulders of the giants,
There
because
we are.
basically we are today because of the people before us and acknowledging their work, acknowledging their achievements, acknowledging the intelligence they left behind, the lessons they left behind, which we built upon. So, when we have that grateful heart and we are humble and we are appreciative, the universe, God, everybody around you will give you more of what you give.
Of course, Standing on the Shoulders of Giants is the name of this podcast talk show. So I'm glad you brought that up. It had to come up eventually. It just has, which is brilliant. You are the winner of many global awards, Tony, as well, which include, and I let Gola read these out, the London SME Most Visionary Entrepreneur, the EXPY and Corporate Coaching and Recruitment Business Coach of the Year Award, silver winner of the Literacy Book Award, and winner of the Maincrest Media, the world recognized Quilly, that's a registration mark for that as well, by the way, award by the National Academy of Best-Selling Authors at its Golden Gala in Hollywood Award night 2022. Yes, folks, Hollywood. And of course, for a path to wisdom, loneliness, the unfakeable code, and a path to excellence. Now, Tony, this is some list of incredible awards and global recognition. I mean, you really have made some achievements here, haven't you?
Uh, it's been a it's been a journey, Lord
Mm,
Russell. But again, it's a journey that was fueled with purpose, with love, with a lot of hard work, with
yeah,
a lot of sacrifices, with a lot of investments, and a lot of time invested in helping so many people. And those are just an acknowledgement of the hard work that we put in that, and
credit
also
to you.
the kind of breakthroughs you create for people. Starting from the first book, now I have almost 25,000 emails from people from around the world that, when you read them, I think at one point I might even publish a book about those things, that it really gives you that kind of light and source within to keep going
It certainly
when
does.
things are difficult. Because as entrepreneurs, we all know, we just recently had the new budget coming out, and
Oh,
the people who are hit the most are businesses, to be very frank and honest. So it's sort of, we all need to chip in for sure to build the economy. But sometimes we can also make the wrong decisions because you can alienate majority of the business owners, entrepreneurs play a crucial role in building our economy in UK. So
absolutely.
if you're gonna penalize entrepreneurs, they're not going to be able to employ people and grow their companies. So there
And
needs to be some kind of balance in there.
oh, that budget was absolutely awful. Without getting into politics, we don't really want to,
Yeah.
but you know, that was just dreadful. But I do say I've got products, FCA regulated as well to actually help that
Hmm.
company national insurance contribution increase, for example, which is
Yeah.
absolutely shocking. 1.2 from 13.8 to 15% rise is actually a 9% increase. Do you realize 9%? It's just
Yeah.
not feasible. It really isn't. So I'm
But
trying to
also,
help our company.
taxation of people's savings, taxation of people's pensions, and
Yeah,
all of those things. For me, because I travel the world and I meet different cultures and different societies and different way of running the country, I find it very extremely old-fashioned to be able, for instance, you pay your taxes as you work,
Mm.
then you pay your mortgage and you pay the interest, and then when your child inherits that, the child needs to pay 40 plus tax. I mean, for me, that is really
Oh,
outrageous, to be very frank and honest.
it is.
So I don't mind paying a small percentage, for instance, but I think it's a rip-off kind of way to keep your people as slaves for the rest of their lives.
But
So
that's
when
what they're trying
somebody
to do, aren't they?
works
That's what
very
they're trying
hard
to do.
and they have kids, I think they should pay a bit of administration fee. But the fact that they have to pay half of it, I mean, it's outrageous.
It is outrageous. It's getting worse too. It'll get worse
Yeah.
as well. So we're not going to get anywhere better anywhere anytime soon, I don't think. With
Some
what's
of my
going on.
clients, Lord Russell, they moved to Dubai, for instance. In Dubai, they pay almost like less than 2% tax.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, I've seen a huge surge of British entrepreneurs moving to Dubai.
Yeah. I've
So
heard
instead
this as
of them
well.
paying taxes in here, they're paying taxes, little taxes down there and build their businesses. So the government really needs to rethink this thing.
And absolutely. And under international law, apart from Americans, of course, because they get taxed twice, wherever they are, under international law, actually, if you pay tax in one country, you haven't got to pay it anywhere else. So you can pay your 2% in Dubai, you haven't got to pay any income tax here, have you? So that's, you can't blame people moving across to Dubai, can you? 2%
Yes,
tax.
I mean, looking at, COVID and Brexit impact, looking at all the different impact that this country has had, many people are struggling to put food on the table.
They are.
So therefore, people will find solutions. Sometimes those solutions are not best for the country. As I said, entrepreneurs are escaping to countries where they can actually grow their businesses.
Correct. And you can see that it's quite a wise thing to do, I think, to be honest. And you'll see a lot more of that happening actually as the years go by under what we've got going on here at the moment. I mean, you have been interviewed by Ian Pelham Turner, an award-winning royal photographer, of course, and royal commentator. Incredible. Plus experts such as Jack Canfield and Brian Tracy. And now, of course, myself, Lord Russell, reaching over 100 million people. I mean, what a great life, Tony, a true professional and a gentleman. You truly are. That's incredible, isn't it?
Thank you. I mean, it's been, as I said, I selflessly dedicated my life to help humanity
Yes.
and every individual that I serve and how they too can actually grow and help humanity. So, some people, they might be working around helping their families, some people in the society, some people going to charity. For me, my mission is truly to help more entrepreneurs, more business owners, more leaders, more politicians, more people of influence so we can together work to leave a better world for the future generations to enjoy.
Yeah,
And
fantastic.
this is the time where we can come together. And I believe in that the light that we all share.
Yep.
And the fact that we have problems globally, it only means that we haven't reached that kind of level of awareness within thyself
Mm.
where we can see I am you, you are me, together we are love.
Lovely, lovely, lovely statement to make, Tony. That truly is, and you're absolutely right there. You're doing a fantastic part to make the world better, make people better, learn. It's a wonderful journey you're on. But what is next in the world of Tony J. Selimi?
So I have quite a lot of projects in the background, Lord Russell.
Why am I not surprised about that?
With the release of my new book, there'll be
Yes.
many more speaking engagements because the book is all about entrepreneurship and growing businesses, and then how successful businesses can use a proportionate profit for different philanthropic projects.
Mm.
And also, that book will go into many awards, and then I'll have to attend those ceremonies across the world and deliver speeches, but also continue to have more people enrolling in Climb Greater Heights, which at the moment we have a 3 months waiting list, and serve people from around the world. My clients are literally global clients. So, UK, US, Europe, Asia, Australia, so
Incredible.
all over the place. And a lot of that has come through word of mouth. Also, the people that I meet, because the training I deliver, it's delivered in luxurious places around the world. And basically, every time I have a break with my client, somebody will listen to us. So about 50% of the clients I've received is from people where I was delivering the training. So, they would come and approach me at the end of the training saying, by the way, I love what you did with your client. Well, they'll approach my client in those 5 days. And then at the end, they'll approach me. So for me, it's really to bring this work more and more down there. I have a new course coming up on Udemy as well, which I'm working at the moment. And this is something that probably will make you laugh. But, we are used to having tantrums in children. But, we see a lot of tantrums in adults.
We do.
So one of the Udemy course I'm delivering, it's about how to better manage adult tantrums. And there are many levels of why those happens, by the way. We have tantrums with healthy adults, which is very concerning.
Yeah.
But then we also have tantrums where people have mental health issues. So I'm distinguishing the two. And also being able to help people to understand which one is which, because the methods are different to the way you're going to approach the adult who is having a tantrum. So
agreed.
And then I'm having another book, which is in the making, which will also be about the adult tantrums that goes with the Udemy course. I'm working on a couple of AI applications. I'm working on the new documentary film. And pretty much, I think next year will be another very, very full-on year.
It sounds very much like it will be. It sounds like that, Tony, completely, utterly complete. And of course, I think now I can say I see more adult tantrums than I do in children. Now it seems to be moved in the other direction, sadly. But yeah,
we've seen it. I mean, I've seen it to start with in our parliament, and I've seen it in business. Then I've seen it on the streets. And the worst one is when somebody drives and you can observe
road rage. Oh, the road rage. Well, you're right. Mentioned Parliament. The House of the Commons. I mean, you see regular tantrums going on in there. It's just
correct. I mean, when you see all of those things, and also I'm working on creating something to tackle the problem of polarization and the effect polarization has first and foremost on the individual, then on the family environment, that also in business, but also in the country and socially. Because, what we've seen in the recent years is how extreme polarization can really damage all of us, no matter which side you belong to or what political party you have or whatever thinking you have. But I believe the more people nurture themselves, the more they grow their mindset, the more they nurture their mind and keep learning, the less the mind becomes extremely polarized. So when we have a more objective mind, you are much more authentic individual, authentic leader, authentic business owner, authentic father and partner.
You're quite right. And as always, on the World Lord Russell podcast talk show, we could talk forever, Tony. We're running out of time. And I'll tell you what, I've had to cut parts out of this script because it was so informative. It really was. So we could talk forever, and we could. An incredible life story about your life as an international renowned TEDx speaker, multi-award winning author of several books, filmmaker, executive producer, and one of the world's foremost experts on human behavior, psychology, health, excellence, empowered and purposeful living, leading and loving. It's been a huge pleasure as always. And as always, the pleasure is all mine. And of course, the show's audience when this podcast is released on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show and the Lord Russell Baker YouTube channel. Thank you, Tony. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Tony Selimi. And I always give a round of applause here, Tony, because it was a fantastic show. It really was. Do you mind staying on just for a couple of minutes, have a chat whilst I wrap up?
No problem, Lord Russell.
Fantastic, Tony. You're an absolute gentleman. You really are. The next episode on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show is Breathing New Life into London Cricket Club, where my special guest will be Neil Burns, who was a former professional first-class cricketer who played as a wicket-keeper batsman at first-class and List A level for various clubs, but spent the majority of his career at Leicestershire and Somerset County cricket clubs. In 2004, following the end of his playing career, Neil Burns reformed the London County Cricket Club, which had been founded, by the way, by W.G. Grace. And what a phenomenal cricketer W.G. Grace was, which Neil continues to manage today. So another great show to look forward to for all cricket and sports fanatics alike. And of course, in exclusive on the World of Lord Russell podcast talk show. And of course, I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the inside. So until then, it's au revoir from him and au revoir from me.